and then she puts this one, say, over here. Okay. Now, simply by the way she places this, this is my client, this is the issue. Simply by the way she places it, which is behind her left shoulder, I know that this is something. So, what actually the constellation revealed was that my client's grandmother had died in childbirth. When a woman dies in childbirth, it can create an unconscious fear in the system that childbirth can lead to death. And that fear remains in the system and is unconsciously carried forward to the next generations. That trauma remains in the system, and someone in the future generation will experience it or live their lives having those same feelings of loss or, experiencing that cheating or whatever, until we go back and heal that.
Can you talk a little bit about mother wound and father wound?
It cannot be seen, it's not tangible, but it is very strongly experienced in a constellation. Okay, so the people who are put into the constellation as representatives or even puppets when we work with connect to the energy of the person they are representing, because I guess the client is carrying his own field, and this field I think can stretch. I don't think that it's a field which is limited to a sphere, because energy is not limited. Energy is all around us. Like even in our cells, we know that most of it is space, right?
Hi, this is Akanksshaa. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. If you resonate with me, please like, comment, and share. Welcome to Multidimensional Soul Podcast and a Talk Show. On this show, we talk about deep spiritual and mystical experiences of people which we normally shy away talking about. We are more than our physical body. We are spiritual beings on a human journey, and we discuss how a soul exists on multiple dimensions. We discuss science, technology, and spirituality point of views and perspectives on this show. Our purpose is to open our minds to limitless possibilities and our hearts to love and shine the light within bright. Our guest today is Ritu Kabra. Ritu is a family constellations therapist, and she's certified from Hellinger Institute in Germany. She's also a certified hypnotherapist from California Hypnosis Institute. She's NLP trainer. She is compassionate inquiry therapist and certified business and organizational constellation facilitator. And she's also a social media influencer. She's successfully healed thousands of people from the issues relating to relationships, especially couple relationships, parent child relationships, success, whether it's business, job, promotion, career, and health. She has trained over 200 therapists in family constellation therapy. Ritu and I had a very interesting conversation about family constellations. What is transgenerational trauma? How it is passed on through the generations? What are epigenetic tags? The importance of how genes and DNA in this transgenerational trauma. We talked about her client cases in detail, how she has helped people through family constellations, whether it's relationships, wealth, health, success, business, everything. And then she talked about the science behind the family constellations. What kind of scientific experiments were conducted? She also demonstrated a family constellation with the help of puppets, which is very interesting. Ritu emphasized the importance of healing the wounds to improve the quality of life and find a better place in this world. She's very grounded and very knowledgeable about family constellation. And what I liked
is how she made spiritual techniques very, very practical. We also talked about fifth dimension ascension and shift in the vibration, and what role does family constellation play in the ascension. So, if you want to heal your wounds from your lineage and intergenerational traumas, this is the episode that you definitely need to tune in. We have with us today Ritu Kabra, who's a family constellations expert. A very warm welcome, Ritu, on Multidimensional Soul podcast and a talk show. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Akanksshaa. I'm really honored to be on this podcast, and I'm really excited and looking forward to sharing whatever knowledge I have and my experience on family constellation with your listeners.
Yeah, amazing. It's an honor. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get into family constellations? What all modalities have you learned earlier?
So, actually, in 2005, I came back to India. I was living in Africa for almost 14 years. Before I got married, I had read this book by Brian Weiss, Only Love is Real, or Many Souls, Many Masters. All of those books I'd read his whole series, and I was very fascinated with hypnotherapy. And I thought at some point in my life I will learn. So when I came back in 2005, I just going through the midday and I saw a little ad for hypnotherapy, and I was like, wow, it's being taught in Mumbai. Wow, I must join. So that was the beginning of a journey. And I think there has been no looking back since then. So I did hypnotherapy to begin with. I started teaching the modality. I went on to do NLP, TASO, Theta Healing, Tarot. Recently, I did Compassionate Inquiry. To be honest, I've even forgotten all the trainings I've done, to be very honest, because, once you get onto this journey, as most therapists will know, we go onto a whole spiritual shopping spree. So, and so I had many years of doing many things, which I was also teaching most of them. And then about 10 years back, someone introduced me to Family Constellation. And to be very honest, I was not interested. I was like, I've done so much. What can be new in this? And she said, no, just give it a shot. I'll do a session for you. I said, okay, out of curiosity, let's do it. And I was actually completely amazed at how the process was done and what showed up. So then she did one more session after a month, and then I decided I've got to learn this. And in fact, to learn it, I had to organize the training myself because there was nobody really teaching it 10 years back. So I organized the training for the two teachers who used to be in Oroville. Now one has passed away and the other one has moved. So I organized a lot of their trainings and I kept learning with them. And then I loved it so much, I decided to go to Bert Hellinger School in Germany. And that's where I did my trainings after that. And then I started teaching. So that's been my journey with Constellation. And somehow, after I did Constellation, I just felt I had a calling that I need to choose between doing all the other stuff in Constellation, and my heart was with Constellations. So that has now become my go-to. It's my specialty. I work using constellations with absolutely any issue, including organizational and business constellations. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. I heard for the first time about organization and business constellations. So,
Yeah.
great. So, can you talk about what is ancestral or transgenerational trauma and how is that kind of worked on in the constellations?
Yeah. So we are all systemic beings, Everything in our environment is a system. And not to go very far, our whole body is amalgamation of so many different systems, right? Even the family. So our biggest influence in our life is our family system because that's where we are born. And of course, we inherit the genetic makeup of our parents. who've inherited the genetic makeup of their parents and their parents and their parents, and so on and so forth. So, in that sense, we are actually our grandparents and our parents, you know. So, when we talk about transgenerational trauma, what we are actually talking about is when I am born into a family system, I inherit the DNA of my family, of course, equal from my mom and my dad. And science is actually now discovering, and science always takes a little time to catch up, is what I've realized, that uh, the DNA, of course, doesn't change. But on our genes, there is a chemical tag, which is called an epigenetic tag, which is what tells certain genes to switch on or off. And this chemical tag can be inherited from the previous generations. Of course, our own experiences also create these tags on our genes, which we pass on to the next generation. So, depending on their experiences, we are predisposed to certain behaviors. So, let's say that grandfather suffered a huge business loss. Okay, say his partner cheated him. Okay, and he had a real shock. He got bedridden, and then he never recovered from that. So there forms in the system a kind of a belief that, you know, you can be cheated, you can't trust your partners, especially because it had such an impact. You know, so he lost his business. That impacts his son, for example, who might be there. So his son sees that we were doing so well. Now we have nothing. We've been cheated. Dad is, you know, bedridden. He's undergone so much trauma. And that trauma is obviously experienced by the next generation as well. So, and then this trauma will be definitely passed on to the next generation after that. So, but in the next generation after that, that trauma could actually pass through the sperm cells, through the stem cells of the sperm. So that is why we say trauma skips a generation. So, you know, the grandfather's trauma will have a bigger impact on the grandchild, because the son is obviously going to be affected, emotionally disconnected, you know, may have a lot of anger, you know, towards the father, towards the partner, and it has impacted his life, his lifestyle. But the beliefs that he has will then pass on to his son or daughter, as the case may be. And then that child, whenever he wants to set up something of his own or get into a partnership, it may not work, or may always tend to have partners who cheat, or may tend to, you know, feel a lot of panic and anxiety whenever they want to start their own business. Also, maybe the father tells them, listen, business is not great a thing to do, it's too much risk, you can get cheated, why don't you do a job? So even though part of him may want to start a business, another part of him is firstly affected by what he's carrying epigenetically, that is nature, as well as the belief of the father saying that no, you know, you can get cheated, things can go wrong, job is safer. So that is nurture. So, you know, it's actually literally, I've given you a simple, straightforward example, but obviously it's not always so straightforward. So this is what I work with. You know, if a client comes with an issue that every partner who comes in my life cheats me, or every time I do a business I suffer losses. So what is actually happening is that what is unresolved, the grandfather's trauma, you know, it's unresolved. He got bedridden. Now obviously we just say, yeah, of course, that's bound to happen, but there was no resolution of that. That trauma remains in the system, and someone in the future generation will experience it or live their lives having those same feelings of loss, or, you know, experiencing that cheating or whatever, until we go back and heal that unresolved trauma which is stuck in the system. And that frees the energy to now move into a different kind of destiny.
Yeah. It's very profound. What I have read and understand is that the trauma can travel up to 7 generations down the line. And there have been experiments conducted on mice where they could actually prove that the trauma, like wars, especially very, very radical disasters, they get carried for 7 generations down the line. And it does very deeply impact an individual. So, can you share some profound experiences of the constellations that you have done for your clients?
I can share something very recently that I did, which was pretty amazing because, people are so different and systems are so different. And every day I have fantastic stories that come into my life through my clients. So I was recently working with a client, and her issue was that, I can't seem to find a good partner with who I can settle down and start a family and have children. And she said, everyone who comes in my life, either they are not good enough, so I want to break it up with them, or if I like them, they are not fully committed. So they are still with their previous girlfriends, still in touch with their exes, so they are not fully committed to me. And she said, and she gave me so many incidents, maybe 5, 6 different relationships where this was just a continuous pattern. And she said, now I am with a person who I really like. He has everything, that I want in a man. He's a perfect person who I'd like to settle down with and start a family with and have children with. But he's also still in touch with his ex. He's not broken up with her. So it's the same thing again. So I just want to know, like, what is this? Why is this happening with me all the time? And I asked her, having children, is it very important? And she said, well, it's not like the most important thing, but I've always dreamt of having a family, having children. And what do you want from children? She said, I want the unconditional love that children can give. In fact, I've even frozen my eggs so that, if I don't find someone in time, then at least I can still fulfill that dream of mine. So we started looking at the constellation. Now, the constellation is a process where we set up different elements of the issue that the client is coming with. The client, maybe the partner, the block, the issue, things like that. So, without going into the detail of the process, we set up a constellation. And I'll just tell you what came out of it. Okay, the final result. So, what actually the constellation revealed was that my client's grandmother had died in childbirth. Okay, and this death in childbirth, so her father was amongst the first few, and this was like the fourth or the fifth child in which she died in childbirth. Her father was still very young, and grandfather married again, and there was a step mother who was not nice. So the father left home very early, but that's not the main thing. When a woman dies in childbirth, it can create an unconscious fear in the system that childbirth can lead to death. And that fear remains in the system and is unconsciously carried forward to the next generations. So, every man that my client met was not father material. They were either irresponsible, not willing to settle down, not making enough money, they were alcoholics, or they were not committed. So if they were not committed, she couldn't settle down with them, couldn't start a family, couldn't have children. So that was her unconscious fear, that she kept attracting men who would never be good enough for her. And after this got revealed, when we figured this out, and when I told her this, she was like, something, this latest guy who I just told you about, he recently told me that he had an accident a few years back, and because of that he will have difficulty having children. So he damaged something in him, and he cannot have children because of that. So even this last man she had attracted had that same issue. Another thing she told me was that her older sister has had 7 failed IVFs. So it was again something which was still being carried as trauma in the system, but it is obviously at an unconscious level. So we can say it is the systemic way, on the one hand, of protecting, because there's a subconscious fear that childbirth can lead to death. So she never finds the right partner to settle down with, and at the same time, it is something which needs resolution. So the grandmother was in a way excluded. People forgot about her. Grandfather married again. Father left home. So she was never talked about. Her experiences, grandfather's trauma of losing his wife, that was never talked about. So that is a systemic way of bringing that trauma to the next to next generation, that this trauma is now ready to be healed. So that was a very interesting case that I did recently. Yeah.
Wow, that was very profound. So, did she find a partner later on, or still she's in a
So
process?
basically, what happens is once we've resolved it, we've given, we've acknowledged the grandmother's trauma, we've given her a place in our hearts, and acknowledged that, you are my grandmother. Because she's actually forgotten. She didn't live to see her grandchild, so she's forgotten. And that acknowledgement, that giving her a place, frees my client now from carrying that trauma anymore.
Right.
And obviously, something shifts in her energy because she's no longer unconsciously connected to that. So something will shift in her energy, and now the partners who come in her life will be more apt. So far, whatever was coming actually was to show her that there's something in the system which needs looking at.
Yeah.
Until then, you can't move on.
Right. Yeah. I have always, been very, very intrigued and fascinated by the constellations. I was actually guided to do a family constellation a couple of months back, and then I participated in online as well as in-person constellations, and it was a cathartic experience for me. Even though the in-person constellation was not for me, I was a participant, but it was very, very radically cathartic, and that's why I thought like it's a very different healing modality and very effective as well. People who are watching this may have seen Another Self show on Netflix to just understand how it works as such. But can you tell our viewers exactly how it works? And when I was participating and when I got the insights, they just came to me. I don't know how. They just came to me when I was playing the role of some family member, and I don't know how they came. So, what exactly happens? Is it that the souls of those family members participate, or is it some energy or some memories from the Akashic records that come? How does it work exactly from spiritual perspective? Can you just explain that and the overview of the modality?
Okay. Uh, I think this is, you don't see a lot of family constellation facilitators putting out a lot of videos and stuff, simply because this is a little difficult to explain. It is something more experiential, but I'm going to try my best. The way I work online, I work one on one, and you have experienced a live constellation where we use the other participants in the seminar who have all come for their own issues as representatives in each other's constellations. So it's not really role play, it's called representation to begin with, because the person who stands in for maybe a grandfather or mother or father is somehow, when they stand in, as in when the client puts in somebody from the other participants and says, "Can you please represent my mother?" or "Can you represent my grandmother?" And they just put them into this space, which is designated as the field. What the client is actually putting out is a internal subconscious image that they carry of the issue. Okay? It's a very felt sense. So they place the participants by an inner feeling of where they feel they are in relation to each other. So it's a very felt sense, a very intuitive way of putting it up without any intention. Because I've seen people saying just a little this side, even when I place my puppets, and I can show you a little thing with puppets if you want later. So even the puppets, when people are online and they say, no, just a little to the right, a little to the left. So it's a very felt sense of placing the elements in the field. And what is this field? So when the people are placed in their positions, something, an energy that they get connected to in the field. Now, this field is also called the morphic field or the morphogenetic field. And there is a lot of research done by someone called Rupert Sheldrake on this morphogenetic field. There are also various experiments which have been there in various books of different. I can talk about one or two experiments if you want, if just to explain how we affect our environment and our environment affects us. Or to put it more simply, let's say as a mother, no matter where my child is, even if my child is in US and I'm in India, if there is something that's going on with my child, and I feel that he or she needs me, I will feel something. Yeah. And I'll call up and I'll say, hey, are you okay? And my daughter might say, Mom, I was just thinking about you. I had this really bad day and I was really missing home and you just called, right? That can happen no matter where your child is. Sometimes you're thinking of a dear friend and they just call you and you say, hey, I was just thinking about you. I've been thinking about you since 2, 3 days. And so we are all connected in some way or the other, right? We are all connected. So the system that we are born into, no matter where you go in the world, no matter you never talk to your family, no matter you never talk to your parents because you don't get along, you don't agree with them, you don't have their beliefs, you are still affected by everything in the family system because you are a part of it and you can never not be a part of it. To me, this field, okay, when you hold a magnet in your hand, right? Can you see the field of the magnet? No, unless you put iron filings on the table, you put the magnet under it, and now you can see a field because the iron filings take a shape. They go according to the field. So it's the same with this field. It cannot be seen. It's not tangible, but it is very strongly experienced in a constellation. Okay, so the people who are put into the constellation as representatives or even puppets when we work with connect to the energy of the person they are representing. Because I guess the client is carrying his own field. And this field, I think, can stretch. I don't think that it's a field which is limited to a sphere because energy is not limited. Energy is all around us. Like even in our cells, we know that most of it is space, right? 90% of our cells are empty. That doesn't mean there's nothing. There is energy there. And it's the same energy. We are all made up of these cells. So it's the same energy, I think, which exists. And it's almost, I can't say that it has a boundary or it has a area to which I can restrict it. So when I set up a constellation for my client, it's the intention of the client. It's very, very important because it's the intention with which the client puts the elements in the field. Okay. And that's the field points to a direction where you need to look. Like where do you need to look? You need to look at the mother's lineage, the father's lineage, how many generations down or what happened. These are called entanglements. So with some theoretical knowledge and with experience, you understand entanglements. And then you can see by how the elements are placed, where this issue could possibly be coming from. Okay. And then, of course, you ask questions, you get to know the history, and then you understand that, okay, this is what the entanglement is. With certain movements, certain sentences, we move towards a resolution in a step-by-step manner. So the client gets a more clearer picture of what the issue is. What changes for the client is the perspective on the issue. That, okay, this mother who I thought was, oh, she never loved me, she made me feel no good, she didn't see me. She herself was one of 6 girls who was never seen by her mother. She was only seen for how she could help her mother to bring up the younger girls, and they were one too many. So she was never seen. How could she see me? What she didn't get, she couldn't give me. So what happens is the perspective changes. And now I can see that mother in a different light. I can understand her. So that anger that I have towards her, that my mom didn't love me, I can let that go. And I can actually see that how she actually gave me more than she received. She actually saw me more than she was ever seen.
So what I understand is essentially we get the downloads from the energy of the persons that we invite to participate in the constellation, and it is a part of the field, and that's how we heal through that process. And I have seen how magically even the insights that come, they are very spontaneous, and they're very, very powerful. I also have done one constellation with puppets online. So you had mentioned that you can show it. So can you show it for our viewers?
I can show you a little demo
Sure.
and also show you a little bit about how we interpret the field, something very small. So these are my beautiful work partners, my puppets who I love. I'm just going to place them. And then I'll just put my camera down and show it. So these are my puppets, which I use for my work. Okay. And yeah, these are, I love these guys simply because, constellation is a 3-dimensional therapy, which means that there's a 3-dimensional view of the issue that you see when we place the elements, be it live representatives or puppets. So you can't always have live representatives. And that is why puppets are so convenient, and they give a beautiful 3-dimensional picture of the client's issue. Okay. So say, for example, my client has an issue of, let's go back to partner. That's something very, very common these days, right? With young girls in their late 20s, early 30s, looking for a partner. And I might decide that, okay, I tell my client that pick up someone for you, someone for the issue. Very, very simple. Okay. So she says, okay, can you pick up this one for me? And where do you want me to place it? And she may say, okay, bring it forward. Okay, you can leave it here. And I say, pick up someone for the issue, not being able to find a partner. And then she puts this one, say, over here. Okay. Now, simply by the way she places this, this is my client, this is the issue. Simply by the way she places it, which is behind her left shoulder, I know that this is something to do with a relationship with her mother. Wow. Okay, so that is an internal subconscious image of the issue that she's carrying. When she places it in the field, it points me to a direction where I need to look. Okay, and then I will ask my client, okay, now she doesn't know it's her mother. I've just said issue, but I sort of have a clue. So I'll tell, okay, feel into this, what comes up. Now feel into this, what comes up. And then slowly, then I may ask her some history about her mother. How's her relationship with her mother? How did she feel growing up? What did she blame her mother for? Things like that. Then get the mother's history. And, slowly, step by step, we move to maybe introducing what happened with the mother system. So our most important relationships, in fact, the most of the issues that we have in our life are affected by our relationship with our mother and our father, because that's the first system that we are influenced by, our family system. It has the most powerful influence on our life. So most issues take us back to parents, grandparents, I would say 100% of the issues are from the system. So, and then slowly that's how I work with, that issue with the mother. Then that can open up once she can receive from her mother. Then she can also receive from others, the partner or friends or whatever.
Yeah, beautiful. You talked about some experiments and nature versus nurture. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
You actually spoke about some experiments with mice. I can just elaborate a few of those experiments, which are very, very interesting, which give you direct insight into how trauma from previous generations can carry on to the next generation. So, they did some experiments with mice where the mice were exposed to the smell of cherry blossom. And at the same time, they were shocked. So, in the brain of the mice, there was a association between the smell and the shock. So later, when the mice were exposed to only the smell, they still went into a shock. Okay, so now there's this association formed to the smell and the shock. Now, the pups and the grandpups of these mice, even though they were not exposed to the shock and smell association, when they were exposed to the smell of cherry blossom, they went into that shock. So they became jittery, they became anxious. So they carried it epigenetically. It was passed on to the next, and next, and next generation. In fact, they've even seen it up to 10 generations. F10 is what they call it. So they've seen the effect of it right up to 10 generations. They did another experiment where the pups were separated from their moms, from the mother, for a few hours every day. Okay, right in the beginning. So they obviously, the pups felt the trauma of separation from the mother. And then then they had, of course, another control group which was not separated from the mothers. So when they were put into a bowl of water, the ones who were separated tried a little bit to escape, but then gave up easily and were, they would have drowned if they were not saved by the person experimenting. Whereas the ones who were not separated had more of a resource to save themselves. So they kept trying really hard to come out of that water to save themselves. So they had more resilience to trauma, to environmental trauma. Okay, so that was another experiment that has been done. And then what they saw was that the changes in the blood and the saliva of the mice, which were traumatized, and then they saw orphans in Pakistan whose fathers had gone to war and mothers had either abandoned them or, but they were in these orphanages. So they had a very traumatic childhood. The changes in the blood sample of the mice and in the saliva were similar to the changes in the blood and saliva of these Pakistani orphans. So the trauma was causing similar changes. So the trauma creates changes in the blood and the saliva of the person going through the trauma. And recently, there have also been a lot of experiments where they've seen changes in the sperm cell and as well as in the ova of eggs. So we are also inheriting this through our parents. That's why we say, that the next generation has a greater impact of the trauma because it's also being passed to us right from the germ cell when we are conceived. So these are, of course, experiments being done in many labs. There is one person, I don't know if I've got the name right, but I'm going to risk saying it all the same. Isabel Mansue is one person who's doing a lot of experiments in this field, and one can read about it on the net.
Wow. Yeah. So it has a scientific perspective, not just the spiritual perspective to it.
Correct. Yeah. And then the nurture part is, of course, Even though we all inherit the same thing from our parents, not everyone expresses it. That is because of the environment. Each child is exposed to a completely different environment. I say, in fact, each child is exposed to a completely different set of parents, because with each child, the parents have changed, they have evolved, they have a different environment, financially, emotionally, psychologically, they're a different set of parents, literally. Every sibling experiences a different set of parents, and the environment is different. So the environment is what triggers it, even though every child might be carrying it, but not every child will feel the effect of it. The environment triggers it. So we have a predisposition, but it gets triggered by the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about mother wound and father wound? Because
Yeah.
they are the most, I think, that impact anybody's life.
Yeah. And I think they've become pretty, what should I say? It's become a phrase that people are now becoming very familiar with, and a lot of workshops are being conducted for healing the mother wound. And I guess there's more and more awareness that, there's a beautiful saying by Bert Hellinger that every success has the face of the mother. And because the mother's womb is our universe for the first 9 months, after conception, and everything that happens, whether the environment is friendly, unfriendly, cold, warm, right from there we start forming beliefs, subconscious beliefs, because of course it's pre-verbal, that stage. So we have these subconscious beliefs which later form beliefs, but they are sort of, I would say, energetic imprints. Okay, about, are we welcome, are we not welcome, is the environment safe, is mother connected, disconnected, available, unavailable, nurturing, does she have enough support? So all of those things that the mother's experiencing, I think that we know from generations, it affects the child. Everything in the environment, everything that the mother experiences, the mother's emotional, mental, physical state, everything affects the child. So right from there, the journey of the mother and child, the symbiotic relationship starts, And if later, if the mother is, say, whatever happened in the womb, but then the child is very welcome, very loved, very supported, then of course some of that can get healed in that phase. But if in case the mother is emotionally unavailable because of so many reasons, right? Maybe she lost a child before, so she has fear. She might lose this child. So she doesn't connect emotionally because she's still in the fear, or she has an unsupportive environment, unsupportive partner, or there's a financial issue, or something in the mother's own experiences of childhood gets triggered when she gives birth to her child. Because that's what triggers us the most. When we have our children, at every age of that child, our own unresolved traumas get triggered. Okay, and that affects how we behave with the child. So those things, especially from the ages of, well, from the womb up till the age of 3, if there's separation, the child has to be put in an incubator, maybe there are surgeries, the mother's sick and separated. All of those things create beliefs in the child about self-worth, am I loved? The self-esteem of the child. Am I welcome? Do I have a place in the system? If the child is one of many, cannot find their own place. All of this affects how the child behaves in the outside world. If I have low self-worth because I feel that mother doesn't love me, I'm a girl, she loves my brother more because boys are more valued, I will carry that into the world outside. And then I'm always looking for an environment where I can feel that love and that support. So I might look for partners who fulfill that void in me because I'm carrying this void. Even the jobs that I might take, I'm looking for, maybe my boss is like a mother figure where I'm expecting her to nurture me, her to hold me, to give me that space which I did not have. And then I might feel, oh, I don't like her. Because I am actually projecting that same energy everywhere, So healing this um, very early experiences is the first step in healing the mother wound. And then, of course, when that can change, that inner space can change, where I'm now understand why I have this void. Where is it coming from? Of course, then that can shift how I look at my relationships with everything else in my environment, be it my work environment, be it my social environment. So that is about the mother wound. Also, because the mother is our first giver. We receive life. We also receive nurturance. When mother, nurtures the child, she feeds the baby. So our ability to receive from the world also is affected by those first experiences. That's about the mother wound. The father, of course, comes a little later. Initially we are only dependent on our mother. The father is someone more connected to the outside world, prepares us more for, the difficulties in life, the rough and tumble of life, and more to do with, we take the father's name. So our identity in the outside world, our place in the outside world, our ability to have boundaries within and without, all of that. That is more to do with the father. So if the mother and father don't get along, then the mother may give us an impression that your father's not good enough. And that can create a break in the bond with the father. Or if our own experiences, father's always traveling, he's busy with work, he's in a high stress environment at work. So he comes home always stressed, always irritable, always angry, and you don't have that connect. And you're like, oh my God, this man, kind of a thing. So that could also affect our ability to find our own place in the world, to feel supported by the male figures in our life, by authority figures in our life. Because father, of course, we look at as authority, and mother as a nurturer. So that can affect how we connect to authority figures. So healing all of that can help us to make a better place for ourselves, to be more comfortable with our identity, to have find our place in our work system or in other social systems. So that is affected by the father. That's a little bit about the mother wound.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep. And it does impact at a deep level, and it impacts all areas of life depending on what you kind of take, what wounds you take from your mother or father. As you may be aware that there is a lot of discussion about the earth moving into higher vibration, and overall energy is changing, it's getting lighter. And when we talk about the trauma and the wounding, it is much denser. And that's where we kind of we need to work on healing that. So what's your experience about how does family constellation sit in the overall new earth paradigm?
That's actually a fantastic question. You know, we spoke about the field, and we spoke about systems, and honestly, everything is a system, right? Starting from our body, every cell, our families, social systems, systems of every organization, every company, every club, everywhere that we go, it's always a system. And if you take it in a larger perspective, then even the way countries are run or things that happen, everything is a system, everything is systemic. Whether we are aware of it or no, the system, so there are implicit and explicit, let's say, rules in these systems, right? There are things that we know as rules, and there are things that we have a felt sense about, like certain things are okay, certain things are not okay, and I think that the whole awareness, so there is a lot of awareness coming up now, because younger and younger people are moving towards, are having more questions about who are we? What's my purpose? I see younger and younger people having these kind of deep questions, which I think in my 20s, I didn't have. It was simpler. I guess there's so much more stress, so much more demand, so much more expectations. So that is the pressures are putting them to question themselves more. Plus, I think the generations are more evolved. They are being born with more awareness because there's so much more exposure. So they are quickly exposed to things and they quickly come to places where we took many years to come. I think with this deeper insight, more questioning, more people becoming aware of energies and understanding that we have to work on our inner self for peace. It exists in us and not really outside. That is, again, it could be that more awareness shifts the earth's energy. The earth's energy takes us to more awareness. It's like both affecting each other. Where does constellation sit in all of this? Constellations are not just about families. It's not, it's what we spoke about are just about people's issues, right? But when you look at constellation and the so-called orders of love, as Bert Hellinger called them, it's a much wider field. He speaks about the spiritual conscience, where everything and everyone belongs. Nobody should be excluded for any reason whatsoever. No matter your color, your race, your economic status, what you have done or not done in your life, what you've achieved or the mistakes you've made. Everybody has a place and everyone belongs. So I think that wider perspective, and we do that very often in constellations. When I have people where their families, where they've suffered from war trauma, where they've had to leave their countries and been forced to leave for, whatever reason. And now so we also bring in a representative, so countries where there is a feeling of this country also belongs and this country also belongs. Where you came from, your country of origin, and the country that you had to migrate to or willingly migrate also belongs. So both I carry in me, where I was born and where I'm now earning my living, I carry both. So that way, I think constellation is a very huge field. It's a very big field and it's all encompassing in that sense that nothing really doesn't belong. So I guess it's already a very fifth dimensional theory, already looking at things in a much wider perspective, So it's right in the middle of all of this and already there with including and accepting everything exactly as it is without judgment. That's the beauty of constellation. And I would like to just quote something from Rumi here, which I love, which is beyond all ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a field, and I will meet you there. And that's the constellation field. Yeah.
So beautiful. I actually get goosebumps every time I hear that. So, yeah, it's about that field and unity consciousness. So beautifully explained. Thank you. Now, you talked about youngsters being more aware and more evolved. And what I have experienced and understand is that there are many star seeds amongst us. So these are youngsters or young people who have come from other star systems, other planets, and taken birth to Earth parents. They have come here especially at this time to heal the intergenerational trauma in the lineage. So have you experienced any such star seeds in the constellation?
Akanksshaa, everyone who does a constellation does it as per their beliefs. I used to do past life, like I told you. I used to do a lot of past life work. And I have stopped doing that. I work only with systems. So, because my belief became that, we are carrying everything epigenetically, genetically, unresolved traumas, energetically, and we are influenced by the environment we are brought up in. And that's our present situation. So today I know, and now I've worked with hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds people, and I can say with confidence that any issue that the client comes to me with, I've always found a connection to the system and something unresolved. My belief about staying with your family system and resolving everything there so that you don't pass it on to the next generation and you can have a better, more connection, more groundedness in the system, a better quality of life, better quality of relationships, and have a happier, more peaceful existence keeps me very much connected to the here and the now and to the planet Earth. Okay. I know people who do work with, these concepts. I am no authority on this because it's also a matter of interest. If I was interested, I would definitely do read and, experiment with my clients. But my belief about the here and now and the family and the system is so strong that I don't go beyond this. I can go beyond in the sense of going into a wider field of, like I said, I shared with you the social system, belief system, the cultural system, the country, and that. But I don't move out of the sphere of Mother Earth.
Okay.
So
I understand.
yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. You talked about business constellation, and this is something I heard for the first time. So, can you explain a little bit about business constellations?
Yeah, a very brief I can give you that. Just like so to explain business constellations, I'll give you a little background first on family constellations. So we are always influenced by the system. We already understand that in families we're influenced by the unresolved or where there are imbalances, whether those imbalances belong to now or to previous generations. So there were these orders of love that Bert Hellinger spoke about. Not that he created them, they already existed. So that everybody has a place, no matter what you have done or what you have not done. And there should be a balance in a system. Giving and receiving should be balanced. And there's a hierarchy in the systems. Everybody has their own place. So grandparents have their place, parents have their place, children have their place. So if the child tries to become bigger than the parent, it's a burden for the child. Or if the child disrespects the parent, then he makes himself bigger than the parent and he looks down, and then that again is creates its own entanglements in the system. In the organizations, in companies as well, there exist these orders, systemic orders, which are some are obvious, but like we know about hierarchy, we know about giving and receiving, we know about inclusion and exclusion. What we know is just the very obvious, right? But for example, if somebody leaves a post in a very negative way, say they've been thrown out, they've been accused of something, they've been, not given their due, or so many other things that can happen, it's possible that that particular post now carries the energy of that person who was in a bad way made to leave. Okay? And then everybody who comes over there may not be able to survive over there because that is a sort of somewhere the person has not been, maybe there was an imbalance, not paid a fair or not given the acknowledgement for what their contribution was to the company. So that can affect that post. And now everybody who comes feels like, oh, something is not okay. They can't survive over there. They leave, or the others who work under them don't accept them because they carry a sense of, oh, this was not fair. What happened with him was not fair. But they can't say it. They feel it. So the next ones who come, they're not able to respect them. They are aggressive. They have passive aggressive behavior. That person feels, I don't belong. Something is not okay here. So there is also in the system, in every system, there are implicit and explicit rules, so to speak. And even though we may not know them exactly, these orders, but they are constantly operating in every system, and they have an influence on the system. So just like in a family, in an organization also, there are these subconscious systemic energies which have an effect on the organizational system, which want to maintain this balance.
Yeah, very different perspective. Because this is the first time I heard someone discussing that, okay, that position in that organization has certain energy attached to it, and that's why there may be imbalances. So beautifully
Yeah.
explained. Without taking the name, can you share any case study or any example that you have done any corporate or business constellation?
I do work with a lot of individuals, businesses, and things like that. So a lot of times when we work with businesses, it's not. I only have individual business owners coming to me for their issues, and so far, not like corporates or big organizations. I guess that would be a good direction for me to move into, because I think everybody needs this work for a deeper understanding of their own systems. But I can share, when you ask me this question, something pops up immediately. So I can share one case, but it is more family, but at the same time, it also has something of business in it. So it's a combination. So it'll be a more, um, somebody can understand better about how, because something is not coming right at the top of my head, but I can share this one. So this client, she is an architect, and she has a company. And she was like, my company is always on the verge of closing. And it's a man's world when it comes to that particular profession, an architect. So she said, even the clients who come, when they meet me, they'll ask me, where's the boss? So they just can't see me as the person who owns this firm and who's the architect. So, and she said, it's always on the verge of closing. And I don't know what it is about this. So, when we set up the constellation, what actually came up and what we saw was that so the money that was invested in her company uh, was something she had inherited from her parents. And her grandmother had, so the story went to her grandmother, and her grandmother very secretly was doing a small business, making something. I don't want to mention what it was. And so she was making something from home and secretly selling it. And she started doing really well. Grandfather didn't know. So she was making some product and she was selling it. And it became very, very popular. So she started doing that as a business. When grandfather found out, he got very angry, and because at that time, women were not supposed to work. Business was a man's world, right? Women were supposed to be the homemakers, stay at home. And here she was doing something which completely went against everything that was expected of her. So he took the business away from her, and then the business really grew because it was already, and everything that was used was her know-how in the growth of that business. And so the business really, really grew. They became very, very big. And the next generation took over, they expanded it, and then they actually sold it for a very big sum. And then the next generation also inherited some money, which my client used to start her own business. Okay. So, firstly, her grandmother was in the man's world doing something which only men were supposed to do. At that time, business. Now, in her case, it was the particular field. Today, of course, women are working, but the field that she was in was a man's world. Okay, so in that sense, it was similar to her grandmother. The money that was being used was what came from there. Okay, so she was the founder of that business from where the money came. And the founder was not being honored, you know. So the money she received, which started the business, was coming from that business which was started. So the grandmother was not acknowledged, which means the founder was not acknowledged. And that is something that can happen in any business where the founder who started the business or people who contributed initially to the starting the business, when it grows, those founders are forgotten, you know. And then you see that there are issues in future generations because the founder has just been, there is nobody knows who the founder was even. So we work with that concept of being, expressing gratitude to the grandmother. She was the founder from where money came, and that's how her business was started. Also, that she did something which is a very man's world. The grandmother did something which only men were expected to do. So, in a way, it was, so we honored, she understood. It brought a lot of sense of understanding, relief. She made other connections also because her husband also would tell her, that, oh, stop it. You need to stop doing this. You're not making enough. And every time she would think of stopping it, a business would come and she would get enough to continue. So he also actually was trying to, get her to give it over to him, let me handle it, kind of a thing. So there was that complete similarity. And then we worked with that. And she actually felt that, yeah, something has shifted. And then, of course, whatever happens in the real world outside. Yeah.
Wow. Well, very interesting connections. And you don't know what has happened in your family history and how it is impacting us now.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What are the most common misconceptions about family constellations?
Yeah, I think the most common misconception is the whole family has to come. That is something people are like, do I have to bring my own whole family? I said, no, you don't have to bring your whole family because we have representatives. You only need to come with your issue, and nothing else, and no one else needs to come. So that's, of course, one of the biggest misconceptions that exist with family constellation, that we have to bring the whole family. I guess another thing is people imagine that it is only useful for certain issues, that it can only be used for issues related to my family, something to do with my family. But that's not true. Every issue is related to your family because every issue is systemic. Because everywhere you are part of a system, wherever you are, whether you're having an issue in your work, whether you're having an issue in your relationship, whether you're having it at home, whether it's with your romantic partner, your business partner, your children, or your own self-confidence, your own career growth, you feel there are blocks here, there, everything is systemic, everything you're carrying from the system. So there is actually no particular issue. It is everything that you are experiencing is affected by your system. So constellation can work with just about everything. I've even worked with certain illnesses and disease, not to say that it can heal everything. And that's definitely not a claim I'm making. Never. But we have worked with issues which have got resolved. Okay. So it can help. Even if it doesn't resolve, it gives you insight and it may bring you peace and better able to accept your condition, just understanding where it might be coming from. Why are you carrying it? So yeah, I think that may be the biggest misconception about bringing the whole family, or that it's limited to issues, because you can work with anything with the constellation. And also that you always need a group of people. No, I do the work one-on-one, and that's what I've been doing since years. COVID, of course, it increased exponentially the one-on-one, because now I work on Zoom. But even before that, I was doing one-on-one work on WhatsApp video with clients in other countries. So it's something I've been doing for a very long time. So one-on-one is, you can work with constellation. You don't always need representatives. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we've covered a lot. As we're coming to the end, I ask all my guests certain questions in a rapid fire round. So can I ask you those questions?
I'm nervous. Rapid fire.
No, you don't need to be, because such beautiful answers you've got so far. Okay. So if you were to explain multidimensional soul to a common person, how would you explain it?
Sorry, this is rapid fire. I'm not very rapid. I should have cheated and asked you for these in advance. Multidimensional soul. I would say that I don't know from which perspective your question is, but I'm just obviously going to give my small perspective on it. And maybe later, after we finish this, I might have a deeper answer and then I'm going to feel bad. That,
No, that's okay.
Now it comes to me.
Whatever needs to come through will come through. So it's okay.
Yeah. If I were to look at the soul from a multi-dimensional perspective, because I used to work with past lives, I could look at that perspective that the soul goes through so many experiences, and whatever you're carrying today comes from all those experiences. I think that what we experience here as the soul is a very small part of something much larger. And we come for certain experiences. And maybe that's why we choose certain systems, because that's where we can have those experiences. And with every experience, our soul evolves. Every experience that we have teaches us something. Now it's up to us. Do I use this experience as a learning and evolve? So we can say that it can move to the next level of some new learning, a higher learning. Or do I, with every experience, feel, why me? Oh, I'm so unlucky. I'm the one who always has to go through this. So I don't take my learnings and I remain stuck in a sense of poor me. So then I'm not giving, so then I guess I remain at a particular dimension in my learning curve instead of moving to a next dimension where my learnings may be different, but something has already gone and now I don't need to experience that again. Of course, I'll still have challenges, but they will be at a different level. So I think in that way, our soul in the same lifetime can go through different dimensions of learning, and the kind of challenges also that we face will shift with every level. And so we may face things which actually lead us to higher learnings, so to speak. I don't know if I can say higher learnings because it sounds like there are lower learnings, but no. Every learning takes you to a higher level. So higher learnings in that sense.
Yeah.
That's how I would look at a multidimensional aspect of the soul. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. What is holistic well-being according to you?
The word itself, I think, describes it, the entire being and in a complete sense. So not just your physical body. There's a lot of focus on physical body nowadays, gymming and eating right and this diet and that diet. So that, of course, is very important. But along with that, also awareness of your inner space, your inner being, which can be, when you are disturbed or something in the environment, becoming aware, what about this is disturbing me? Understanding that it's triggering something in me from which I'm reacting. Going to a therapist, I want people to get rid of this belief that if you're going to a therapist, you're cuckoo or you are, mentally not 100%, or how we say India, mein te chawan nahi kam hai. No, everybody needs therapy, and actually, it's so good when you can stop getting triggered by things in the environment and lead a more grounded, a more integrated, and a more consciously aware life. Because therapy brings you in more in touch with who you are, and you're more conscious of yourself. So instead of reacting, you start responding. I think that's part of being holistic. So diet, your body, as well as your emotional, mental health. It's very, very important. And therapy takes care of that, according to me. Then, of course, there is yoga, there's meditation, there's all of that, which are all beautiful as part of a life to live a more complete life, more healthier being.
What is the ultimate purpose of life, according to you?
I think it's very individualistic. Definitely, with our billions of population on Earth, we cannot say that everybody has the same purpose. But I think it is understanding who you are. If we can even do that much, really being present to life and really understanding your being and understanding that every person is complete and whole the way they are, even in their brokenness, with everything that they have or don't have. In that moment, they are complete. And so, in every moment, we are also complete, just as we are. I think if that understanding, without the pressure of, I want to get there, do that, become that, and just living in the moment, if we can do that, I think we can all be much happier. So I think that's the purpose of life for me. That's what I'm always striving to do.
Yeah, beautiful. What is love, according to you?
It's a feeling. It's a feeling. And I think it can only be felt in your body. Everything outside can be. So for me, love first begins with the self. If I can look at myself and say, I love you, I really love you. If I can experience self-love, only then can I actually look at someone with love, really, truly love. So for me, love is self-love. It starts with that. Everything else is conditional. If you're nice to me, I love you. If you're not nice to me, I may take a step back and say, the love is not there anymore. So it's momentary outside, but within, it can be complete for myself. So loving myself, I think, is the maximum I can experience love.
Okay. What is your parting message for our audience today?
Life is short, life is beautiful, and life is simple. If you want, it can be very simple. So my parting message is, life is simple, keep it that way.
Okay. And where can people find you? How can they contact you?
I have an Instagram, I have a website, I have a contact number. And I would also like to share that I have a podcast called The Nervous Therapist, where I have real life cases which I've shared with learnings. So if people are interested, I have a blog on Medium. And I've also written a little book on relationships. So, people can connect with me on my website or my Instagram or WhatsApp. I don't know, Akankshaa, are you going to put those details somewhere?
Yes,
Then?
I will put everything in the video. Yes.
Okay.
I will put everything in the description so people can connect with you.
Yeah.
So, Ritu, it's been absolutely a pleasure chatting with you today, having you as my guest on this podcast, and lovely, lovely to have you here.
Thank you, Akankshaa. It was really fun. You had me stumped sometimes with your questions. But I loved it. I love talking about this subject. So thank you so much. I feel honored to be a part of this. And I hope to connect with your viewers, maybe in another podcast or through the information you're sharing about my contact details.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching and listening in wherever you are in the world. As Ramdas says, that we all are just walking each other home. So thank you for co-creating the new earth along with me and our guests. And if you resonate with me, do subscribe to my channel and do let us know how you find our episodes. Thank you so much. Lots of love.